Oh boy, another day, another outrage towards Atlus games. You know what I find really funny about Atlus games? They're wildly popular and beloved by so many, and yet they also invite the hottest of takes from the most nitpicky individuals in the entire world who are not satisfied by the depiction of characters in the game because it doesn't truly represent them, or that the characters are not them. Let's talk about the most recent one that got people jumping on the bandwagon too much. There was a recent era post about Catherine Full Body talking about an article from IGN and wildly extrapolating a segment from one of the article. It's hinting about a recent controversy surrounding Catherine, which I talk about in detail in another video, but to put it simply, it's about the character Erica and how the game doesn't portray her as correctly as some of the progressives wanted. Despite Erica being one of my favorite characters in the game and a character beloved by so many that people just don't care about her being trans. I think I see the issue there. Anyway, the first part of that sentence is certain characters, as in Erica, are properly named in the credits. Something that they already did in Catherine Classic, and for good reason in my opinion. Aside from the fact that it's utterly disrespectful to the character, why would you name a character that identifies as Erica throughout the game as Eric, something that you wouldn't even know until you get K. Catherine's best ending. It would only be more confusing to the people who finished the game on C. Catherine's ending like me. And the second one is saying that there will be some lines being changed. The OP for the post assumed that it was this part of the game that I turned into a meme.
So you guys really need to learn how a girl's heart works. A girl is always hoping someone will come and sweep them away.
I'd be more convinced if a woman was telling me this.
Take it outside, I will show you fucking sir!
Which gained more exposure, no thanks to me. No confirmation if this line is going to be changed, but what I can definitely say is that this line was in Catherine Classic. And if you don't know Catherine Classic, it's the re-release of the original game on Steam from this year. If that line passes through the censors in the Classic Edition, I doubt that it's going to be censored in Full Body, which is the brand new remake of the original game with tons of added content. But I'm not putting my hopes up there. So we don't really know definitively what line they will change or what will they change in general. We don't know much about what the game censors to make any sorts of business decision. So I suggest you guys to hold your horses on the outrage and wait for a statement from Atlus or new information to emerge. But what I can definitely say is that Atlus has done some censorship before. They removed the part where Junpei said, "You mean she's a he" line from Persona 3 Fest in Persona 3 Portable, but it's a line so minor and so forgettable in the most forgettable section of the game that I didn't even notice it in the first time I played them. Would the change be something so minor that you won't even notice it? Or will it be something so major that it completely destroys the fundamentals of the game? Either way, censoring the game, no matter how minor they are, just to appeal to the moral guardians and the progressives, is just not a good thing to do. There are some people who straight up said that they're not going to buy the game anyway, and they're not because they care more about politics than they do about video games. You know who will? Us. People who have supported you and your company for years and talk about how amazing your games are and your characters are. How your games have waifus so amazing that people are still debating on who's the best one because they're that good. But still, I have to emphasize one glaring thing that this hoopla brought up into the table. I noticed that progressives always criticize the most minor and insignificant details of the characters or accentuating the negative so much that the positives become largely ignored. I've seen these people talk so much about certain aspect of a character that they don't like, but I've yet to see any of these people talk about how these characters and many other characters in Persona or any of the Atlus games are some of the most memorable and beloved video game characters ever. I don't understand the progressives' arguments in how the characters are wrongfully depicted or misrepresentative of their experience because I love these characters. They're amazing characters that I want to hang out with and have a beer with. I don't understand why these characters got so much hate for the most minor and insignificant things that do not speak of the character as a whole, but thankfully one article from weeks ago would remind me of why. Persona can't do women justice without fixing its conservatism. Oh my lord, here we go again. The reveal trailer for Persona 5 The Royal sparked so much speculation that the re-release might include a playable female protagonist. This possibility has now largely been ruled out, and while the excitement for it was understandable, developers must truly reckon with the inconsistencies that permeate their games' politics to do both women and queer characters justice. I don't know what justice that you need to do to these characters, writer. These characters end up being loved by pretty much everyone who play Persona or any of the Atlus games. Hell, Erika is my favorite character in Catherine. I just don't see why the needs to change her dialogues. Her overall character is already freaking sweet, and so is Naoto and An and many of the characters that you're going to criticize because it's not the way you wanted them to be. The writer explained how in Japan there's a movement known as #Q2 where women are pushing back against the expectation that they have to wear high heels to work. That's really dumb, but what does this have to do with Persona?
Reading about this movement, I was immediately reminded of Persona 5's An and her iconic catsuit. Much like the women participating in #Q2, An is forced to wear clothing that makes her deeply uncomfortable and is largely ignored when she vocalizes that discomfort.
Writer, it's largely ignored because she's actually quite comfortable in the suit as the game goes on. She might feel uncomfortable about it initially, then she whips a bunch of shadows into submission and tell them that they should squeal like a pig. That's from the Dengeki manga, by the way. To quote Yusuke,
You should be more confident in yourself.
and to quote Futaba,
Really? I like mine.
oddly enough, both statements were taken from Makoto complaining about her suit, not An. And even then, she was more accepting of it later.
An's case becomes even more troubling when you consider the intense sexual harassment she's been dealing with at the hands of the school volleyball coach Suguru Kamoshida. Despite all the trauma that results from Kamoshida's behavior, the Persona dev still felt like it was appropriate to put her in a revealing suit that even she takes issue with when it first appears on her.
Because the suit is supposed to represent her taking back her sexuality. She wants to be a model and look good and strong and not be abused by someone else. She wants to dominate it.
An's character, though actually complex and interesting, is ultimately wasted by the game continuously forcing her into the box of hot ditzy model because of the way she embodies her femininity.
The game is not forcing her into the box of hot ditzy model. That's her actual character. There's nothing wrong with being a hot ditzy model, and while An isn't the most intelligent member in the Phantom Thieves, at least she's not Ryuji.
Futaba, Makoto, and Haru all avoid this because the tropes they embody are meant to be taken more seriously, but An's status as a hot blonde model constantly pushes her into the role of first object, even when this is in direct opposition to the trauma she's faced.
Writer, you kind of missed the part where her being a model is something that she consented to and something that she wants, especially if you follow her social link, which I have to rewatch for this video, and something that I think you should do too, or play the game again in general.
No matter how much she manages to grow, the game is always policing her, pushing her back into the sexy trope she fought so hard to escape from because of how she presents to the world.
I'm starting to suspect that you just played the first few hours of the game and never bothered diving into the social links. That's not what remotely happened in the game at all. Not in the main story as her role got sacked in favor of others. Not in the social links where she regained her strength and confidence and wanting to become a model. I don't understand how you, writer, come into this conclusion when you're writing this paragraph. Either we're playing two completely different games or you're looking at this in a weird lens.
This isn't the only time the Persona franchise has gone down questionable routes with gender.
Oh no, you're not gonna cite other characters in Persona, aren't you? And by Persona, I mean the last 3 games and not the first 2, which has Tatsuya from Persona 2. Oh, let's not mention him and the fact that he can be a lover to another man. I'm sure he's just shouting at these progressives with these hooplas. Am I a joke to you?
In Persona 4, Kanji and Naoto both are originally presented as queer before their art.
No. Wrong. Kanji has always been straight and Naoto has always been cis. You're delusional to think otherwise.
In an article on Giant Bomb, user Matt Bodega said, the key to understanding Kanji isn't sexuality, it's gender. They go on to talk about how Kanji's interest in feminine coded, and because of this, the citizens of Inaba perceive him as being gay, whether or not he actually is.
Whoa, wait a second. Citizens of Inaba perceive him as gay? That never happens. At all. Ever. It's him who perceives himself as gay. Are we even playing the same game? And why aren't you playing Persona 2 already?
In theory, you could apply this notion to Naoto's character as well. According to her arc, the only reason she wanted to be a man was that she desperately wanted to be a detective, but because of the strict gender roles in Japanese society, she couldn't as a woman.
That's not really the reason why she couldn't be a detective. The primary reason is because the ideal detective that she watched in fiction was men. Her peers in the police department mostly dismiss her for being young rather than being a girl, and her social link is about reminding her why she loved being a detective in the first place, and not to mind too much about the acceptance of others on your age and gender. It sounds like you haven't played the game, writer. I highly recommend you to do that.
We again see femininity being policed by Japanese society, and there is an argument for Persona 4's critique on them, but considering Atlus's past with queer and trans characters, Catherine, and extremely poor handling of future ones, I can't comfortably give it to them.
It's really weird that you brought up Catherine as an example because, again, Erika is one of the best characters in the game. Her being a former man means not much to me. She's an amazing character regardless, and people really like her. Shouldn't that be the most important thing to be talked about in this entire debacle, rather than petty nitpicks that you people exaggerate as huge issues?
It was bad enough for this game to have two seemingly queer characters be taken away, but
Okay, writer, hold on a second. These two characters are never yours to begin with. Don't claim that the games take your characters away because they're not the way you wanted them to be. That's just ridiculously entitled.
It was bad enough for this game to have two seemingly queer characters be taken away, but having the only queer characters in its sequel be portrayed as basically every harmful stereotype about queer men known to man.
Oh god, you're talking about that scene with Ryuji. Again, Ryuji was the butt of the joke in that scene, and not the two flamboyantly gay guys. It's not like I'm gonna look at this scene and immediately think that the guys are gonna make people straight. They're not exactly James Charles. I know that has been debunked, but I'd like to make that joke anyway.
The inconsistencies of the series' politics continue in other areas of Persona 5 as well. The whole game centers on taking out corrupt adults in positions of power, and ultimately focus on taking down a manipulative and cruel politician who wants to keep things the same forever. Yet the politics of these games consistently trend towards the politics of Japan's own corrupt prime minister and his cronies.
And the writer goes on tangent about Japanese politics. I don't care, writer. I thought we're talking about video games, and now you have to criticize Japanese politics too? I'm not familiar with this, and not that it matters anyway, because the basis of your critique is dumb. These games do not make any political statement, and yet you compare that to a real world's political stance. Not because the game actually does them, or have those elements, but because you personally disagree with how they depict the characters. I'm just utterly bewildered that someone would go this far.
Shido is the villain of Persona 5. The whole work was meant to be a critique of this kind of politician and the apathy that allows men like him to gain and hold power. Considering that Abe is the longest running prime minister since World War II, this, on its face, seems like it would be a damning piece of cultural criticism, but it rings hollow as the game actively embraces tropes and beliefs about LGBTQ+ folks and women that members of Abe's party have claimed publicly multiple times.
You know what, writer? I'll bite on this critique. What was that article that you cited? I love how provocative the title is, and it perfectly illustrates you as the writer for this article. The article talks about a Japanese politician saying that gay couples are unproductive, and he's questioning on whether or not it's appropriate to spend taxpayer money on them. I don't know about that, writer, but I can definitely say for sure that you are unproductive, and I don't want taxpayer money to go to you. But let's get back to that paragraph. The weirdest thing that you talk about here was how Atlus Games actively embraces tropes and beliefs about LGBTQ+ folks and women that members of Abe's party have claimed publicly multiple times. You know what's funny about that, writer? I just recently booted Persona 1 on the PSP, and the first thing that popped up when I start a new game was this disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed in the game do not necessarily reflect those of Atlus USA or its employees. The game is not really making any political statements whatsoever. It's just how the story goes. And your interpretation is, Atlus hates LGBT people just like Abe's party. As if the games themselves are some sort of a political statement from Atlus. Even if it is a political statement against women and LGBT people, I really like An, I really like Naoto, I really like Kanji, I really like Erika, and Tatsuya and Jun is my OTP. Clearly, Atlus is doing an amazing job at making me hate women and LGBT people. Clearly, this entire thing was not born out of some ridiculous paranoia.
So long as the Persona series embraces trans or homophobia and sexism or victim blaming, it will never be able to truly critique the systems it clearly wants to.
So these games embraces transphobia, homophobia, sexism, and victim blaming so much, all of the characters that you mentioned are loved by so many people, including myself. I think you should stop nitpicking, take a look at the bigger picture, and appreciate the fact that people love these characters as they are, rather than as what you want them to be. Which, considering your own personal character and your own personal politics and what you wrote throughout this entire article, it would probably make them really unlikable.
Much like in American politics, to try to separate these issues from the greater whole is to ultimately weaken and undermine your position.
The only person who does that is you, writer.
Until P Studio can come to grips with these conflicting viewpoints, I just can't see them doing a playable woman justice.
We already have a playable woman in Persona 2 Eternal Punishment with Maya and Persona 3 Portable, and they're both awesome.
We don't need any more instances of over-sexualizing young girls who have already been traumatized by sexual assault, or portrayals of gay men as aggressive predators on the prowl for high school-age boys to take against their wills.
Oh, for God's sake, writer, play Persona 2! Writer then talks about Japanese politics and trying to insert her Western progressive worldview on it like a freaking colonialist, and then asks P Studio and Atlus to shift their worldview into something more progressive, because the writer was horrendously misinformed about the games and only cared to nitpick the smallest insignificant details of it.
Luckily, there seems to be some hope in this area. On March 30, 2019, Job Rainbow, a Japanese organization that brings together LGBT+ and LGBT-friendly businesses for job affairs for queer folks, had one such fair. One of the several companies in attendance was Sega Japan. While this isn't concrete evidence of change for Atlus or P Studio, it's hopefully a start.
Absolutely zero concerns about the livelihoods and the Japanese culture in general. Just shove in my personal politics and hope that these studios cater to them. That's not racist and condescending. These people never grasp on the fact that a lot of these characters that they criticize are beloved by so many people because they're too bitter into looking at the smallest and most minor of details that they consider important when everyone else doesn't, and accentuating the insignificant negatives so much. Game developers should stop catering to these ridiculous mindsets and start catering to what the gamers actually wanted, like the ability to blow Morgana's clarinet.